Shalom Aleichem, everybody. I want to wish everyone a extremely uplifting and inspirational Tu B'Shvat. What we're about to do is to give you some insights, myself right now, and after I finish, Rabbi Breitowitz will speak for about 15 minutes about insights, tremendous insights into Tu B'Shvat, and hopefully this will act as a preparation for your own seder. Now, I want to mention that this Divrei Torah, this preparation that we're presenting to you, is dedicated by Marilee and Jonathan Bloom for the Ilui Neshama of Mechaya Ruth Bas Avram, Tzeicher Tzaddik Lebracha, that she should have an Aliyas Neshama. This is the yard site, and all of a sudden just keeps going up and up. Last year, we actually had an in-person Tu B'Shvat Seder, and I will actually put in links below. Go down below into the YouTube description box, and there will be links to previous Seders conducted by Yiboneh. Okay? So you'll be able to go through them. What I'd like to do is just share some insights, as I mentioned. Tu B'Shvat, Yud Hey. We don't use the term Yud Hey, we use Tet Vav. Okay? Tet Vav. That is 9 and 6, it's 15. But really it's the 15th of Shvat, of the month of Shvat. Interestingly enough, I want to give you some background to what I'm about to talk about. Number one, there is a disagreement in the Gemara, in the Talmud, in the Oral Torah, when the world was actually created. Okay? Now, in chapter 1 of Genesis, it does refer to the 7 days and who created it, the attribute of Elohim. So we see that the name Elohim is judgment, is strict justice. However, chapter 2 is kind of going over from the beginning what actually happened in chapter 1 in a different format, but it's using the name, the attribute of Hashem, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei Elohim. In other words, Hashem Elohim. And we have a famous expression in Rashi. Rashi tells us that Hashem wanted to, originally when he thought of creation, he actually wanted to create the world with strict justice, but he himself realized this is not a good idea. It will not last. Therefore, when I do create it, I will create it with both attributes of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, which is of mercy, and of the attribute of strict judgment. Okay, now, so what do we review so far? There's such an argument. When was the world actually created? Was it in Tishrei or was it in Nisan? Okay, Rabbi Eliezer says it was in Tishrei, strict judgment. Rabbi Yeshua says it was in Nisan, mercy. But we already know the truth is that it was created with both. So how can there be such an argument? So Tosfos explains that the argument is just based on one particular point, and that is where we're going to go into a little bit deeper. One says that it was conceived in thought alone on one of those 2 days, one of those two options, but it was actually created in actuality on the other option, and vice versa. So let me just explain. So Rabbi Eliezer would hold that it was actually created in Tishrei, but it was only thought about, perhaps, in Nisan, whereas Rabbi Yeshua said, no, the opposite, that it was thought about on Rosh Hashanah and actually created Lamase, in actuality, in Nisan. Now, when do we actually make a bracha, right? Every 28 years, there's a special blessing that we make on the sun and the moon, when the Maros, when the heavenly bodies were created on the 4th day. They're in the exact same position every 28 years, and we make a special bracha at the very morning on the 4th day of this creation that happens, meaning the structure of the universe falls into place every 28 years. And the truth is, we say it in Nisan. So Tosfos actually says that is actually the truth, because we could figure it out. It's very easy. Go back through the calendar, work out every year, every day. We know exactly when the leap years were, when the leap months. Everything could be worked out to the day of when the world was created. It was definitely created in Nisan, which means that God actually had in mind machshava, thought, din, in Tishrei. Now, just think about the names, right? We always go from the right. We always go up to the right. We do things with the right first because the right has to do with mercy. The left has to do with din and judgment. And even the Hebrew alphabet in those names. What is the name? Tishrei, which is backwards, meaning it starts at the Hebrew alphabet in reverse order, meaning it starts with Taf, then Shin, and then Resh, which symbolizes din. And not only does it symbolize din, even the constellation for that month is the Moznaim, which are the scales, and that symbolizes judgment. And the whole month is full of judgment, from Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the 7 days of Sukkot, where we bring korbanot for the world, for atonement for the world, and Hoshana Rabbah, which is the last day of the actual holiday of Sukkot itself, is the final judgment for the non-Jews, and the following day, Shmini Atzeres, is the final atonement for the Jews. Okay, what about the other side, in terms of the month of Nisan? So Nun Samech, already it's going from 50 to 60, it's going up in order, it's going in order of the alphabet. And even Aviv, which means springtime, the Torah calls it the Tkufa, the month of Aviv, which is Aleph Bet, going from right to left. Okay, so we have this concept already. Now, when was the world actually created anyway? It's a little bit of a trick question, because the world was actually created 6 days, let's just say 5 days before Adam, right? Adam was created on the 6th day of creation. So it means 5 days before is when the world itself was created. So either way you look at it, if you're going to look at the birth of the world on the 25th of Elul, which is 5 days before the 1st of Tishrei, or the 25th of Adar, which is 5 days before the 1st of Nisan, fine. There's another famous expression in our oral Torah, and that is that before a neshama, before a soul comes into the world, Hashem announces that this soul will marry that soul. Already from before the conception, which is an amazing concept. Before conception, Hashem already has made it, has already decided who will marry who. Unbelievable. So what is 40 days before these two dates that I mentioned? 40 days before the first, let's say the 25th of Elul. It's real simple to figure out, but it's the 15th of Av. Happens to be the 15th of Av is a great day for Shidduchim. We'll get to that in a second. What about 40 days before the 25th of Adar? Guess what? It's Tu B'Shvat. It's the holiday. So actually both of those days, both Tu B'Shvat and Tu B'Av, ultimately is about Shidduchim, as I mentioned. Okay, I didn't mention it yet, but I'm going to mention it now. A Roman asked Rabbi Akiva, I get it, your God created the world, right? He created it in 6 days. But what's he doing since then? It says he rested on the Shabbos. What did he do come Sunday morning or Saturday night? So Rabbi Akiva says what God is doing with his time, he's making shidduchim. He's making pairs. And what does that mean? That's what he's involved with. That's really hard. For us, it's impossible. But for Hashem, everything that happens to us, whether you get a promotion and you move to a new city and you meet new people, or God forbid you get fired and you whatever, and you meet new people and you go to a new city, whatever happens in this world ultimately is for the sake of shidduchim. You stub your toe, you go to the hospital, or you go to the store and buy Band-Aids, whatever it is, every single thing that happens to us is ultimately to bring about the fruits, right? Shidduchim is for marriage. The point of marriage is what? Not only to have pleasure and to be a giver, but also to procreate, to give off fruits. Okay, keep this all in mind. So Tu B'Shvat and Tu B'Av, as I mentioned, the word Tu, Taf, Tetvav, is what? Is 15. Hashem created the world with the Yud and the Hey. Yud and Hey is God's name that he used to create the world. Okay, and the Yud is masculine, meaning it represents the masculine aspect, and the Hey represents the feminine aspect. So ultimately, he created the world with both male and female aspects in order to unify. Our goal here in this world is to unify Hashem's name. So ultimately, it's our goal to figure out how we can best get along with our partner and have shalom bias, of course, right? And work on our character. All the things that we're here to do, right? To do mitzvahs, right? So I want to go back into this idea. Okay, so ultimately, Tu B'Shvat is related to a demarcation for when we separate our tithes of the trees. So the fruits that have grown from a certain period of time, and we're going to base it on the blossoming. The blossoming is like the early part of the fruit, right? As soon as the blossoms come, you know that there's going to be fruit. So it's the blossomings that are going to determine, because we don't mix 1 year of tithe to the next year of tithe. Okay, so there's a halachic, practical reason for Tu B'Shvat, but there's a very metaphysical thing going on as well. What's really happening on even a physical level? That the sap, okay, let's start with the rains. The rains have come down. We're now towards the later part of the winter, right? Most of the winter rains have come. So the sap that is now being drawn up, or beginning to be drawn up, I don't know if you want to call sap like the blood of the tree. The life, let's call it the life force of the tree, is only beginning to start to draw up the energy, and the end product will be fruits. But that's what's happening on Tu B'Shvat. Okay, now, Tu B'Av, there's also a relationship to trees. But the difference between Tu B'Shvat, which we're talking about the life force coming in, just beginning as if we're talking about Machshava, and then Tu B'Av, which is towards the end of the summer, when the wood, there's a demarcation mark, the wood that has been laying out all summer, the assumption is that the worms and the little creepy crawler nonsense bugs have died, and because of the heat of the summer, and therefore that wood can be brought into the Beit HaMikdash, into the temple, to be burnt. You don't want to bring wood that's full of worms or creepy crawler things and put it onto the altar of God. Okay, so this is called dead trees. So whatever is dead, it sounds like it's the very opposite of what we're talking about on Tu B'Shvat. Tu B'Shvat is when it is the potential of life, and that's going to be the mercy side. Whereas Tu B'Shvat, which is right before Nisan, Tu B'Av, which is going to be the 40 days, really it's 45 days before the Yom Hadin. So you're talking about dead trees. But again, there's a demarcation specifically for when those insects or whatever these creepy crawler things are finished with. So the truth is that human beings are like trees. We are like the tree of the field. A man is like the tree of the field. In what way? We're actually the opposite, right? The tree of the field, you see the roots are going down into the earth, and the fruit is coming out from the top. On our side, on human beings' side, the truth is that we are really upside down. That our roots, hopefully, and this is what we're going to pray for, that our roots really should be, and we're going to draw our nourishment from the heavens. We're upside down, as many of the Hasidic stories and the stories in the Talmud and so forth in the Zohar, that man is really, hopefully, rooted above. That's where his roots are. And this world is about producing fruits. So what I want to say is that what is our job in this world? And what can we take advantage of comes Tu B'Shvat. This is the time of conception in the mind. That what you think of, the brain is very powerful, the spirit is extremely powerful. And this is the day that we also want to become like Hashem, right? Hashem, that's why he gave us the mitzvahs. That's why he actually commanded us that we should be like him. This is the day where we can conceive. In the word koach usually is translated as power, but it also means potential. This is the day where we can open up and tap into all the potential of this coming year. And this is a very important time to pray, to meditate, and to really get our own house in order. But it starts here. So have a clear mind, set aside a place, set aside a time, and think of all your desires, all your dreams, and I'm talking about the ones that are rooted in heaven, where you can figure out a way to draw that energy from on this particular day. and pray well, and pray hard, and pray often. This is a special day. And now that you're going to also eat the fruits, just imagine what you're doing. You're actually eating the fruits that were produced, right, from the energy that came previous year. So you're getting a taste, because the fruits represent the world to come, meaning the product of your actions, right? You're getting a taste of the world to come. So you're getting an idea of what you should want, right? You may not be aware of it, but when you eat the fruits, you're really thinking about, wow, this is what I was created for, pleasure, right? Pleasure of what? To get it straight, to be rooted in heaven, and to draw the sap, to be the beginnings. All beginnings are tough, it's true, but all beginnings, that's where you want to do your best prayers and your best motivation to get on the right track and stay on the right track. But it all starts, if you're not on the right track to start with, you're not going to end up in the destination you want to be. So B'ezrat Hashem, you'll have clarity, right? You're going to eat these fruits, you're going to drink the 4 cups of wine or grape juice, whatever you do, right? And you're going to start to draw up the sap. We start with white wine or white grape juice and move on to the full red, because we're starting with ethereal, we're starting with, I call it colorless, but it's just the beginning of the sap until you get to real chazak, strong life. So B'ezrat Hashem, you'll stick around, you'll hear Rabbi Breitowitz, and I wish you all a Shana Tova, Happy New Year's for the trees. We are the tree of the field.
We know that this Wednesday night and Thursday will be what you might call a relatively small holiday in the Jewish calendar, but one that is actually quite beautiful and has many, many depths of great meaning, and that is the 15th day of Shvat. The 15th day of the month of Shvat, two simply means Tesvav, Tu B'Shvat, is mentioned in the Gemara as Rosh Hashanah Le'ilanot. It is called the New Year for trees, at least according to Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai says the New Year is the Rosh Chodesh Shvat. Beis Hillel says the 15th of Shvat. But in the context of the Gemara, this is really a very, very technical rule, and that's a rule about tithing. And the rule of tithing, when you have to give Trumot and Masrot, you have to give various tithings for the produce of Eretz Yisrael. So the halacha is every year must have its own tithing. I cannot give tithes from the produce of one year on that of another year. So consequently, you have to know when does a new year start for purposes of combining produce. So for most purposes, the new year starts on Rosh Hashanah. So I cannot give tithes for the produce after Rosh Hashanah with the produce before Rosh Hashanah, or vice versa. But for trees, the Talmud says the demarcation point is not Rosh Hashanah, but the 15th of Shvat, because with respect to fruit, we have a different tithing date, for reasons I'll get to a little later. So technically, there is no mention of it being a holiday, there is no mention of it having deep spiritual significance. It is simply the technical demarcation point between the fruits of one year and the fruits of the other year for purposes of Trumot and Masrot. Nevertheless, in the course of time, particularly through the influence of the great Kabbalists of Tzfat, in the time of Rav Moshe Cordovero and then the Arizal and the Talmidim of the Arizal, Tu B'Shvat became invested with a great, great deep spiritual significance. They pointed out that although we call it Rosh Hashanah Le'ilanot, the Rosh Hashanah for trees, it has a relevance to human beings, because in the Chumash, a human being himself is called a tree. Ki ha'adam eitz hasadeh. In fact, we are considered to be upside down trees. An earthly tree has its roots in earth and it reaches up to the heavens. We are the opposite. We are rooted in the heaven and we extend into the earth. Therefore, we are a tree. And therefore, when Tu B'Shvat is a Rosh Hashanah Le'ilanot, there is a dimension of Tu B'Shvat that applies to us as well. And the Chidushei Harim, the first Ger Rebbe, explains this in a very powerful way. The Talmud Yerushalmi writes that any fruits that blossom on the tree after Tu B'Shvat is a product of the rains of the new year, meaning the rain of this new year produced the sap that caused the fruit to blossom. If, on the other hand, a fruit blossomed or budded before Tu B'Shvat, the primary rain that generated the sap was of last year. The Chidushei Rim says metaphorically the word Geshem, which means rain, refers to all of the spiritual brachot that God puts into the world. The bracha of health, serenity, the ability to understand Torah, shalom bayit, love and compassion that exists between people. These are also gishmei bracha. These are the rains of blessing that God brings into the world. So the Chidushei Rim says, although it is on Rosh Hashanah that God decides what blessings we're going to get, we don't draw on those blessings till after Tu B'Shvat. Meaning, from Rosh Hashanah to Tu B'Shvat, we are living off last year's rain. After Tu B'Shvat, we are living off the rain, so to speak, that God decreed for us on Rosh Hashanah. Therefore, the Chidushei Rim says, one should be able, if you're spiritually sensitive enough, to feel a difference in your life between pre-Tu B'Shvat and after Tu B'Shvat. Now, it may not be better. Sometimes on Rosh Hashanah, perhaps, God forbid, something more negative was decreed for me. But it will be different. Which means, yes, it was on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur that God decided the brachot we're going to get in the year. But from Tu B'Shvat, those gates are open. We can access spiritual treasures that we otherwise could not get. And therefore, it is a time of renewal, of new opportunities. Just as the winter is gradually fading as we approach the rejuvenation of the spring, so too in our own human existence, our own spiritual existence, there are new gishmei bracha, rains of blessing that are available. And thus, by parallel to Pesach that has a seder, the Mekubalim created a Tu B'Shvat seder of eating various fruits and even drinking 4 cups of wine to suggest that this too is a time of liberation and opportunity. In a more prosaic way, though, it is a time to feel gratitude for all of the blessings that God put into the world, particularly the blessings of the fruits and the grains that God blessed the land of Israel. And therefore one should eat those peirot, and one should understand that when you eat the fruit and you make a bracha and you have gratitude to God, you are releasing the spiritual energy in the fruit. And by releasing that spiritual energy, you are bringing a bracha down to the world. There's a very famous explanation, I think it's from the Arizal, but if not, it's from a Kabbalist, that the well-known statement in the Gemara, anyone who eats without a bracha is as if they are stealing. So most understand that to mean that everything belongs to God, and God gives you permission only with the bracha. So if I eat without a bracha, I'm stealing from God, because it's God's property until I make the bracha. The Talmud itself explains it that way, because one verse says, Hashemayim shemayim lashem v'aretz natan l'vnei adam. God owns the heavens, but He gave us the earth. Another pasuk says, Lashem ha'aretz umloa. God owns the earth. And the answer is, Kodem bracha, it's God's property. After bracha, I have permission to use it. So the simple meaning of gezeilah is you are stealing from God. But the Mekubalim say you are also stealing from the rest of the world. Because through your bracha, you could have unleashed spiritual blessing into the world that would benefit the whole world. When you don't make a bracha, you are stealing from people the blessing that could have come in. So, although I would not call Tu B'Shvat the Jewish version of Arbor Day or Earth Day, but it does have some connection to that idea, and that is, we glory in the beauties of nature. And that generates within us feelings of gratitude and joy for the very beauty that Hashem put into the world, the diversity of taste and smell and color. And these are things to think about. Hakarat hatov, gratitude, is always a wonderful quality to cultivate. And Tu B'Shvat gives us an occasion to express that gratitude in the context of understanding that, unlike perhaps other religious traditions, Judaism does not disparage the physical. Judaism does not reject the pleasures of this world. But Judaism teaches that you can take the pleasures of those worlds and sanctify them, elevate them, dedicate them. And then the very beauty that exists in the physical realm now becomes connected to an inner spiritual radiance that brings bracha to you and brings bracha to really the entire world in one way or the other. So I know it's a little early, we're a few days early, but I want to wish everyone a happy Tu B'Shvat, and may all of us merit to tap into the new potentials, the sap, so to speak, that comes from the new brachot that become available precisely at Tu B'Shvat, and may we always appreciate the beauties of nature and use them as a stepping stone to appreciate the kindness and the benevolence of our Creator.
Shamash Shir Chadash, Uvinah.